Hello readers, I'm the Avid Reader and today I'm reviewing The Stand, written by Stephen King in 1978. So this is Stephen King's fourth published novel. And it's also one of his biggest, so it's his biggest I think along with It, or it's slightly bigger. And this is basically a post-apocalyptic tale, so it's in 3 parts. There's a pandemic, over 99% of people die in the world. Now you have a group of people who have to survive, and then they have to fight against another group led by an evil person. So there's some dark fantasy in this story, but that happens later in the book. This is 1300 pages and there's nothing really fantastical happening in the first 400 or so. In the first part of the story, it's in 3 parts. So the first part is about Captain Trips, this flu thing. People get it, they get very sick, then they get slightly better, and then they get sick really quickly and die fast. So this pandemic was started by the US government doing something called Project Blue, and we see from the different character perspectives that it kills basically everyone around them. So all their parents die, for example, and you've got the government trying to cover this up. They start shooting journalists, and then you have soldiers who mutiny and they start killing each other. And basically it becomes a place of anarchy. So the book starts out with some soldier escaping from his place, and through that he spreads the virus around. One of the first perspectives we get to see is from Stuart Redman. All his friends pretty much die and he's taken into custody by the government. He's put in some white room. Eventually some government man comes to kill him, but Stuart manages to fight off that guy, kill him, and run away from this institution thing. While he's out there, he meets Len Bateman, who has this dog called Koyak. And Len Bateman knows a bunch about sociology. Then Stu moves on. Got Nick Andrews, who doesn't hear anything and he's a mute, but he can read lips. And he's jumped by some guys and beaten up. And the sheriff picks him up, interviews him, and then the sheriff promises to find these guys. He arrests 3 of the 4 who did it, and eventually the sheriff gets sick also with the flu. Nick Andrews is deputized, the sheriff and his wife dies, and 2 of the 3 prisoners dies. He lets the 3rd one out eventually, but then the 4th guy comes back and tries to kill Nick Andrews. So Nick Andrews manages to kill that guy, but he loses 1 eye. You've got Lloyd Hendrid, who's a common criminal. He's a guy who robs stuff with some guy named Poke, but Poke kills a bunch of people. So of course the cops wanna catch him. Eventually they go to some place like 7-Eleven and try to rob it. They kill a bunch of people, but Poke is killed. Lloyd gets arrested. He's put on death row, and you've got all these inmates dying of starvation or from the flu. The guards have left, and Lloyd is slowly starving, so he's actually thinking about eating his dead cellmate. Randall Flagg takes him out and he makes Lloyd Henry swear loyalty to him. Got some girl named Fran who gets pregnant. She leaves the guy she's pregnant with. Eventually she teams up with her best friend's brother. Her best friend is dead, and this brother, Harold Lauder, is quite a weird guy. Nobody really likes him. But yeah, they decide to team up and leave town. You've got Larry Underwood, who's a B celebrity. He made a half-popular song and he treats women not that great. He's trying to improve. He meets an older woman along and they walk. He screams at her, she leaves, she comes back, and eventually she chokes on herself, so he's left without anyone. So she's dead. That's part 1. Part 2 is the road to get to Boulder, Colorado. So everyone is having these dreams about Mother Abigail, this old religious black woman. They're also having some dreams about Randall Flagg, pretty much this demon thing. So Larry is followed by a couple people called Joe and Nadine. Joe is a small kid. He almost tries to kill Larry, but eventually they become friendly. Nadine is a former school teacher. You can see there's something wrong with her in the head, but Larry is for some reason attracted to her. Stuart meets eventually Franny and Harold. Harold doesn't want them to be together, all 3. Franny wants Stu to come along, and Stu and Fran are attracted to each other. And they start developing a relationship. And they're on the road, and eventually they see these guys who look like cops, but they're not, and they tell them to get out, and these false cops are about to kill them. But they resist and they kill these people. It's quite a detailed scene, it lasts several pages, and they free some of the girls that these guys have been raping, but some of those girls are killed. And by the way, Stu picked up Glenn Bateman also, but Glenn Bateman left his dog he had called Koyak back, but eventually that dog comes back to them. And eventually, Fanny, Harold, Stu, Glenn, they meet this Mother Abigail, who's almost like a messenger of God for them. And they decide all to go to Boulder, Colorado, where they start setting up a government. Eventually, Larry Underwood and his crew joins them. And the committee that's chosen there is quasi-government. Got Stu, who also becomes kind of a cop there. You've got Glenn, you've got Franny. You don't get Harold. You've got also Sue Stern, which is the least developed character of the Committee of Seven. You've got Nick Andros also. So by the way, Nick Andros, he found some guy who's mentally challenged in the head. We brought him along to Boulder. And Larry Underwood is also put on the committee. Harold feels resentful towards them. Eventually Nadine comes to Larry, says she wants a relationship with him. Larry says no, he's with someone called Lucy. Nadine cross leaves, goes over to Harold's place, and Harold and Nadine are plotting to kill these people. So Nadine sleeps with Harold, and Harold never slept with a woman, so he's excited but at the same time scared because there's this connection between them and Randall Flagg. We're gonna betray the free zone thing at Boulder and go over to Randall Flagg's place soon. And you have a bunch of government committees that are set up to take care of different things. You have the power committee to get things back on. You got the burial committee to bury all the dead people that have died, since there's a lot of them. I mean, 99% are dead. And Mother Abigail, she disappears, and she's basically been the head of government, kind of. So you've got the government themselves, that committee, and then you've got the head of government representative, kind of. Mother Abigail, she's disappeared. People who admire her now are starting to forget about her. Harold and Nadine decide that they're gonna blow up this committee thing, and Fran has read a disturbing diary by Harold, and Harold has also read the diary of Fran, which talks badly about Harold after he made a move on her and it failed. She did not reciprocate, she's with Stu now instead. So Harold and Nadine, they decide, okay, we're gonna kill these people. So they put a bomb in the next place the committee is gonna meet, and Fran gets a weird feeling and tells them to get out, but it blows up and Nick and Sue die. But before this blow up thing, they decided to send out 3 spies to Las Vegas who got the bad guys of Randall Flagg. So they sent the Judge Ferris, they sent Tom Cullen, who's handicapped in the head, and they sent this tough girl called Dana Jurgens. And Harold and Nadine skip town. That's part 2, pretty much. Part 3, you've got Mother Abigail telling the surviving committee members that they have to go to Las Vegas to Randall Flagg. It's the will of God. Franny, who's got a bad back from the blow-up thing, she refuses, but Mother Abigail heals her back. But in the end, you've got 4 people who go on this journey thing. So you get Glenn, Larry, Stuart, and Ralph. So they start going on this trip. Franny, who is pregnant, is worried for Stu, but they go anyways. Nadine and Harold are on their journey. Randall Flagg betrays Harold and makes him fall. Nadine leaves him there. Harold tries but fails to shoot her. Nadine leaves. Eventually, Harold realizes the wrong he has done and he kills himself, and he leaves a note for the others. Nadine gets to Las Vegas and Randall Flagg is to be her husband. He has to have sex with her, but she changes her mind, but too late. He rapes her anyway to make her pregnant. And the judge is killed by a couple of guards of Randall Flagg. Randall Flagg captures Dana Jurgens and tries to make her speak of the 3rd spy. Dana refuses. Randall Flagg has a weird charm about him, but you got some of the good guys that manage to resist it. So Dana Jurgens kills herself, and eventually Nadine also makes Randall Flagg kill her by pushing her off some balcony thing, and she falls to her death. Randall Flagg questions himself, oh, things are not going so good for me. And you've got some of his crew who's leaving him now, but Lloyd Henry, he stays to the end. And you've got these other 4 guys, the good guys, on their journey. Stuart falls down a cliff and he breaks a leg, so they have to leave him behind, although Larry Underwood does not feel comfortable with it. But Larry is in charge now. They get to the town of Las Vegas. They're arrested by some guys of Randall Flagg. These guys, they're loyal to Flagg, but they're not really comfortable with arresting these innocent people and putting them in jail. Eventually, Randall Flagg visits Glenn Bateman. Glenn mocks him, so Lloyd is ordered to execute him. Lloyd misses his first shot, then shoots him 3 times. Glenn mocks them again. He's shot dead then. Then you've got Larry and Ralph, who are put in these death contraptions things, kind of, so they're put in cages and they're going to have their limbs pulled apart. Then you've got some crazy character. He's called a trash can man. He likes to burn stuff, pretty much a crazy arsonist. He's blown up some of the jets for Randall Flagg, although he worked for him, kind of. Now he's come back with a freaking nuclear bomb. Then if somehow you got the hand of God from the sky that comes and blows this nuclear bomb up, and Las Vegas is blown up. The West Coast is pretty much done now. Randall Flagg disappears but is not dead. Lloyd is dead, Larry is dead, Ralph is dead. Stuart is however alive. He's got the dog Koyak, and Tom joins him eventually, nurses him back to health, and they go back east to Boulder, Colorado, but it takes months. There's snow, They struggle. He's in a recovery, Stuart. His leg half heals. And Tom eventually understands that Nick is dead and is really sad about it. Stuart, Tom, and Kojak eventually they return to Boulder. They get to see Franny. Franny has given birth to a child, Peter. And it has survived having the flu, so Peter has an immunity against the flu. And several months pass by and Franny and Stuart, who are together with the baby, they decide, okay, we're gonna skip town now. There has been a switch of government, now the cops are gonna start arming themselves, so things might turn ugly. So the two of them decide to leave. And the story ends with Randall Flagg being reborn in some place with indigenous people who are not quite evolved yet societally, and they submit to him as he looks like some god demon thing. That's the end of The Stand. So how would I rate The Stand by Stephen King? I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. Now, let's compare this to It. It has a lot of scary moments, but it also has a lot of boring stuff in it, so It is a weak 8. The Stand is a middle to strong 8 for me. I prefer it to It. And it has some small boring parts. The ending is kind of boring. The last 50 pages, it's like, why? The bad guy is gone, why are we still here? And it's not that interesting, they're journeying back to Boulder. Otherwise it's fine. This is, by the way, the uncut edition. People complain, yeah, the middle is sagging. I don't agree. I think it's still pretty strong. Of course, the beginning is strongest. The second and third parts, they're also quite strong. It's not my favorite Stephen King book. It's a mid-tier one kind of for me, an 8. So it's above it but under The Wastelands for me. This should not be the first Stephen King book you read because it's so large. So if you don't like an author taking hundreds of pages to develop his characters before really starting the story, then you're not really gonna like this, but I enjoy it because it's interesting. You've got a bunch of stuff that happens that's not really relevant to the plot overall, but in difference to It, it's interesting actually what happens in The Stand. Another good book, Stephen King. So this was the Avid Reader's review of The Stand, written by Stephen King in 1978, and this is the 1990 uncut edition. It got an 8 out of 10. I hope you readers enjoyed this book review. There are a bunch of other Stephen King book reviews on this channel, by the way, if you're interested. And I hope I will see you readers next time.